What if I told you you're carrying around a time machine in your pocket? No, seriously. Every time you take a photo, you're literally freezing a moment in time. Pretty mind-blowing, right? Today, we're going to crack open this everyday magic and see exactly how cameras turn light into memories. Buckle up, because we're about to dive into the wild world of cameras. Imagine a camera like a really fast artist. You know how an artist takes a moment to look at something and sketch it out? A camera does the same thing, except instead of using a pencil, it uses light. And it does it in a flash faster than you can say cheese. The camera itself is basically a light-tight box with a peephole. Think of it like a clubhouse you had as a kid. Instead of keeping people out, it's keeping light in. Or like those blanket forts where you didn't want any light sneaking in while you read with a flashlight. But inside that simple box, some serious science is happening. Let's start with the lens, the eyes of the camera. Here's where something really wild happens. The lens actually turns everything upside down. No, seriously. Just like how your grandma's reading glasses make everything look bigger and clearer, a camera lens does something similar, but with a twist. When light bounces off whatever you're photographing, like your cat doing something silly, it travels through the lens in straight lines that cross each other. This crossing makes the image flip upside down, just like if you looked through a pinhole. Don't worry though. The camera's image processor, think of it as the camera's super smart computer chip, flips it right side up before saving it. And then there's the aperture. It's like the camera's adjustable pupil, made up of overlapping blades that create an expanding and shrinking hole. You know how your eyes automatically adjust when you walk from bright sunlight into a dark room? The aperture does the same thing, but you get to control it. When these blades move, they make a hole that can go from really wide, like f1.8, to super tiny, like f16. Photographers call these numbers f-stops. The smaller the number, the bigger the hole. I know it sounds backward, but stick with me here. Think of the aperture like a kitchen faucet. When you open it wide, like f1.8, lots of light floods in. Your background gets all nice and blurry. Photographers call this bokeh. It's perfect for those portrait shots where you want your subject to pop. But when you close it down tight, like f16, less light gets through. Everything stays sharp from front to back. Great for landscape shots where you want every tree and mountain in focus. Here's a cool trick. Hold up your hand and make a tiny hole by curling your index finger. That's like a small aperture. Now make the hole bigger. That's like a wide aperture. When you look through these different sized holes, you'll notice things look sharper through the smaller hole. That's exactly what happens in your camera. Next up is the shutter. Picture it as a super fast curtain that opens and closes to let light in. And when I say fast, I mean blink and you'll miss it fast. It's quicker than a cat knocking something off the table or your little brother stealing fries off your plate. This speed, known as shutter speed, lets in just the right flash of light to create a balanced photo. But here's where the magic really happens. The sensor. Imagine the sensor as millions of tiny buckets catching light, like trying to catch raindrops in cups during a storm. Too much light? It's like filling those buckets with a fire hose, everything turns out too bright. Not enough light? It's like trying to fill buckets with an eyedropper. But when it's just right, it's like the perfect pancake batter, everything comes out looking deliciously balanced. Think of it like making hot chocolate. Too much milk and it's watery, too little and it's too strong, but just the right amount makes it perfect. Now that we know all the parts, let's see what happens in that split second when you press the shutter button to take a photo. Get ready. We're about to see this whole process in super slow motion. The moment your finger hits that button, your camera springs into action like a well-choreographed dance. First, your camera's autofocus system kicks in, like a robot bartender making sure your drink glass is exactly where it needs to be. It sends out invisible beams to measure the distance to your subject, and the lens adjusts faster than you can blink, bringing everything into crystal clear focus. While this is happening, your camera's light meter and processor are working together like a master chef tasting a dish, figuring out if there's too much or too little light. Those metal blades in the aperture slide into position, creating just the right-sized opening, maybe squinting down in bright sunlight or opening wide in low light. It's like having a tiny mathematician doing complex equations in milliseconds. Then the real magic show begins. The shutter curtain flies open like the world's fastest stage curtain, and light rushes in through the lens like shoppers on Black Friday. Here's where it gets weird. All that light crosses inside the lens, creating an upside-down version of your scene. Imagine your cat photo but with their paws in the air. The sensor's millions of tiny light buckets catch all this flipped information, like trying to catch upside-down raindrops in microscopic cups. In less time than it takes to say cheese, those light buckets convert the light into electrical signals. The image processor, that powerful computer chip we talked about, takes all this raw data and works its magic, flipping the image right side up, adjusting colors, removing digital noise, and making thousands of tiny improvements. It's like having a photo editor working at superhero speed. Finally, your camera processes all this information, adjusting colors and sharpness. The final image gets saved to your memory card, and voila, you've just frozen a moment in time. The crazy part? All of this happens in a fraction of a second. Now movies? Those are just a ton of these images strung together. A film camera takes multiple photos in rapid succession, 24 frames per second, in fact. Each frame is a single photo, and when you play them back really fast, it creates motion. It's like those flip books you might have made as a kid, where each page has a slightly different drawing, and when you flip through them quickly, it looks like the drawing is moving. Our eyes and brains blend the images, giving us the illusion of continuous movement. That's why you never see gaps in movies. Cameras have evolved a lot since those early versions. From the first permanent photograph in the 1820s, which took 8 hours to capture, to today's instant smartphone shots, we've been obsessed with freezing moments in time. Those early pioneers would be amazed to see how we can now take hundreds of photos a day without thinking twice about it. Speaking of modern cameras, ever noticed how smartphones have multiple lenses now? It's like having a tiny photography studio right in your pocket. Let's break down this mini camera crew. Your main lens is like the reliable friend who handles your everyday shots. Then there's the wide-angle lens, the landscape artist of the bunch, trying to fit that Grand Canyon view or your whole family reunion in one shot. That's its specialty. And don't forget the zoom lens. It's like having a telescope in your pocket, perfect for capturing that faraway bird or your kid's moment on stage when you're stuck in the back row. All these lenses work together like a well-trained team, with your phone's software acting as the director, choosing the perfect lens for each shot. Pretty amazing how we went from single-lens cameras to carrying around a whole camera crew in our pockets, right? Cameras just like us aren't perfect. Sometimes you get blurry photos if the camera shakes too much, like trying to write on a bus, or the lighting isn't quite right. Low light can make it hard for the camera to focus, like trying to read in the dark, or you might get noise, those grainy dots in your image, like static on an old TV. But don't worry, with practice, you can learn to work around these challenges. And the future? It's looking even more incredible. Scientists are working on cameras that can take pictures of things around corners, like having X-ray vision. Capture smells, though maybe we don't need that feature for every photo. So next time you snap a photo, remember, it's not just magic, it's brilliant science making your memories last forever. From those early 8-hour exposures to smartphones that can peek around corners, we've come a long way in capturing life's moments. Speaking of moments, what's the coolest photo you've ever taken? Drop it in the comments below. And if you loved learning about the science behind everyday things, hit that subscribe button for more mind-blowing explanations. Until next time, keep capturing those magical moments.